Our debut video on this channel covered the world's best motor racing curves. And later, a year later, we made a sequel about the best extinct curves in the world of Formula 1. But looking at those old videos from this channel, I understood that there are still many curves that deserve some kind of tribute. Through this channel, we've told you about the best existing and extinct curves. And now we will make a combination of both topics and present you the 7 best curves that Formula 1 no longer uses. Whether it's because the track design changed radically, because Formula 1 no longer races on that circuit, or simply because they became extinct, this is a small tribute to those couple of videos that are really very special to me on this Skyline Racing channel. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back and review the history of Formula 1, and thus, welcome to the top 7 legendary curves that Formula 1 no longer uses. The first curve of this top falls within the description of extinct curve, as it was redesigned in the year 2013, completely disappearing it. But at the time it was the most challenging and difficult curve on the calendar, and the headache not only of the pilots, but of the Formula 1 engineers. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Singapore Sling, better known as the Triple Chicane, which is a curve that was located on the Marina Bay Street circuit in Singapore. This swiftly earned both Formula 1's hatred and respect simultaneously. For being an unusual curve with very high curbs in a combination of left, right and left turns. That this chicane would make the cars fly, and I mean this literally. The worst part was that the exit wall was practically attached. So if the cars lost control, they had a short trip straight to wreck the single-seater. Once the cars entered the small straight of St. Andrews Road, they aimed directly at this curve, touching the brakes a bit at the entrance and trying to trace it through the middle so that all 4 wheels wouldn't lift off the ground and have a clean exit, avoiding the outer wall. It was very important not to attack the curve aggressively, because the curbs would lift you up, and if you crossed it wrong, all 4 wheels could get in the air, and you would completely lose control of the car. Until it landed, being a very dangerous curve, mainly because of those extremely high curbs that accompanied it. The curve, introduced with the circuit in 2008, gained a reputation for being dangerous due to the number of accidents it caused. The pilots vehemently complained, calling it the worst curve they had ever driven on. The organizers were so proud of this curve that they named it the Singapore Sling, calling it their best cocktail. Under so much pressure, they had no choice but to redesign the curve completely to make a single left turn and eliminate the chicane completely, remaining only in the memory of the fans. As a challenging and difficult curve loved by the public but completely hated by the pilots. Ladies and gentlemen, position number 7 is the Triple Chicane Singapore Sling from the Marina Bay circuit. The curve, ranked 6th on this list, was one of the fastest and most challenging curves in the 90s. A curve that commanded a lot of respect and was feared by the drivers of those years. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the curve located on the Barcelona-Catalonia circuit, used from 1991 to 1994, known as the Nissan curve. This curve was in the original 1991 circuit configuration. It was curve number 10, located at the Kamsa curve exit. And it was a chicane of monstrous speeds right and left, which were extremely fast but extremely dangerous. After exiting curve 8, the drivers faced the complex as we know it today. But upon reaching curve 9, they entered at speed, aimed at this chicane and faced it as quickly as possible, violently, to maintain speed until the braking of curve 11, in a curve that was almost full throttle and of completely surgical precision. The curve was deliciously challenging, with the high speed at which the driver had to arrive and face. But precisely in 1994, after Senna's death, the curve received a provisional change to make it much slower. Formula 1 feared such fast curves due to the tragic accident involving Ayrton Senna at Imola. And after this, in 1995, the circuit was reformed. Turn 9 was made rounder and a straight was added so that it was no longer necessary to go through this Nissan corner. Supposedly they did this to make the circuit more conducive to overtaking, but in the process they ended up killing. A challenging, completely monstrous and beautiful curve. The curve as such is not extinct today and still exists in the design of this circuit. Formula 1 no longer uses it, and few local categories utilize this curve. In its normal and existing version, it remains extremely fast and therefore extremely dangerous. It remains one of the best curves Formula 1 no longer uses, ranking 6th on our top list. The Nissan curve of the Barcelona-Catalonia circuit. It's been several years since Formula 1 has competed in South Africa, specifically since 1993 when the last race was held at the Kialami circuit. However, before Formula 1 raced on the permanent circuit that we know today from 1961 to 1987, this track had a completely different layout of 4.1 kilometers, and it featured a spectacular curve that required speed and precision at the entrance and exit. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you curve number 1 of the old Kialami circuit, known as Croton Corner. A tight right-hand curve with a considerable progressive slope from the entrance of the curve to the exit, making it a visually spectacular turn and for the pilots quite challenging. To cross it, the competitors had to reach the highest possible speed from the very long main straight, brake decisively and trace it from inside to outside in order to maintain a constant speed and avoid going off through the escape route. But with the cars of that era, the drivers even had to slide the car, making control at the exit of the curve. Had to be practically prodigious to gain as much time as possible without going off through the escape route. The curve was named in honor of the Croton Hotel, located near it. But with the redesign that the circuit had after 1985, this and other curves were eliminated, making the circuit completely different from what we know today. So it's correct to say that the curve is officially extinct, and unfortunately today it only remains in the memory of the fans, as an extremely fast, beautiful and challenging curve from head to toe. So I've put number 5, the Croton curve, from the old Kialami circuit in South Africa. Today the Red Bull Ring is one of the world's best racetracks. But, as is the case with many European racetracks, many were reformed and their previous versions were either much longer or much more dangerous. And the curve, which is in 4th place in this top, it was located on the old Red Bull Ring circuit, which at the time was named Osterreichring. And the curve in question was called Bosch curve. This curve had its huge reputation at the time as it was considered the most challenging and beautiful curve this circuit had. The curve in question was number 6, which was a big right turn with a banked turn at the exit of it, which was gradually increasing its speed, making it a slow entry curve, but that increased vertiginously from one moment to another. To cross it, the pilots had to considerably reduce their speed at the entrance, turn close to the right vertex, and progressively accelerate until reaching the middle of the curve. And when it banked, go with the accelerator to the floor, looking for a clean exit but also very fast. The curve was completely spectacular and loved by pilots and fans, but the circuit was redesigned in the year 1995 and for 1996. The track cut its distance, which went from measuring almost 6 kilometers to dropping to 4.3, and in it many fast curves were eliminated, including the legendary Bosch curve, which was delayed and turned. A slow curve that did not have the same level of spectacularity as its predecessor, thus becoming a completely extinct curve. But in the heart of Formula 1 as one of the most beautiful curves in the sport's history. So, ladies and gentlemen, position number 4 in this top, the beautiful Bosch curve of the old Osterreichring circuit. Reaching the podium repeats a circuit with a legendary curve, extinct from Formula 1. And it repeats again in what for me was one of the best sections of the circuit, which in its design was much better than the current version of it. Ladies and gentlemen, directly from the Rodriguez brothers racetrack, the famous S-curves of the Mexican circuit. And yes, these curves as such still exist today. However, they are nothing compared to the originals, which existed in the original design by engineer Oscar Fernandez Gomez Daza or in the redesigned version of 1986. Since previously these curves were much longer and more pronounced, the pilot began with slow turns, controlling the unevenness and acceleration to avoid stepping on the massive pianos of the curves. And in the middle of them, gradually increasing the speed, turning precisely close to the vertices and putting in correct countersteers to turn correctly. Maintain speed and exit at full speed to the back straight to face the famous banked curve that this circuit had. As I mentioned earlier, these feces were much longer and challenged you at low speed at the beginning, and the speed increased exponentially at the exit. And the unevenness and the small bumps it had made it a very difficult curve to tame. And the headache of many pilots, which made it completely challenging. However, the circuit was redesigned in 2015 to attract Formula 1 again after a 23-year absence from the Grand Circus. German Tilke designed this redesign. He decided to eliminate the slow part of the stools to give it a small straight and redesign them to make them much faster and flatter. Therefore, although the current redesign of the curves is really not bad and they are still challenging, It does not resemble the complexity of the old curves of this circuit that in its redesign unfortunately were lost forever, along with other mythical parts of this Mexican circuit. Number 3 on our list of legendary F3 curves no longer in use. The old curves of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. The silver of this top belongs to a curve that is particularly one of my favorites in the world of motor racing, which belongs to a British circuit that has hosted Formula 1. The E-Track currently lacks the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile's Grade 1 certification, which is necessary for Formula 1 to compete. So it's very unlikely that we'll see this circuit and its wonderful Turn 1 being attacked by the top category again. That's just how it is, folks. The second place in this ranking belongs to the first turn at Brands Hatch Circuit in England. The fantastic and challenging Paddock Hill Bend, which is a high-medium speed curve with an absurdly steep drop and a dirt escape prepared to punish more than one who has a heavy right foot. As I mentioned, the curve belongs to the Brands Hatch Circuit in Great Britain, which had the honor of hosting Formula 1 until 1986. And the difficulty of this curve lies entirely in its entrance, as the drivers come with a lot of speed from the main straight and must hit the brakes well to capture the inside of the curve that starts downhill and with precision start to accelerate when the car is already pointing correctly to the outside piano without going over at the entrance so as not to end up going through the escape at the exit of the curve. And with that, have the highest possible speed to face the next part of the circuit, being a completely delicious and challenging curve. As I mentioned, Brands Hatch Circuit currently has an Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile Grade 2 classification, which doesn't allow it to host Formula 1 competitions. So even though the curve exists and is used by many categories of the motor world, we're unlikely to see this Formula 1 circuit again, because it would require a multi-million-dollar investment to remodel it and bring it up to the standards required by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile's Grade 1 certification. Given Silverstone's prime position, it's unlikely that Formula 1 will return to this circuit. This stunning curve is the premier event in the top category's calendar. So, position number 2, the Paddock Hill Bend curve from the Brands Hatch Circuit in England. In position number 1, I have placed a curve that is extinct, but I do recognize that it was a sin not to have placed this curve, as the top one of the video of legendary extinct curves that we released at the time. But in my defense, I thought the curve we're going to talk about had not been part of Formula 1, but it was in the year 1959. Ladies and gentlemen, you know that my weakness is banked curves. And the number 1 spot. It's the greatest arrogance seen in the world of motor racing, made to a banked curve known as the Wall of Death on the Avus circuit in Germany. This absurdity was a banked curve that served as the final turn of this circuit, which was conceived with the sole intention of returning to Avus, the fastest circuit on the planet. North Curve, also known as Nordschleifer, is an extremely fast curve with a banking of 43 degrees, which was quickly nicknamed the Wall of Death, as there was nothing above to stop the impacts of a car. And if a single-seater lost control and went over the top, it would end up flying and falling, probably to a certain death. The curve was built with brick, and the speeds were completely insane. Since you were coming from a very long straight at maximum speed, and the drivers had to face this left turn, with the accelerator to the floor at over 300 kilometers per hour and, with a lot of faith, maintaining a considerable height, a constant speed, until being able to exit it and continue with the insane speed of this fast German track. The curve was simply monstrous. In fact, there is no curve in the world that could better fit the adjective monstrous. That was used for the 1959 German Grand Prix. But after this competition, Formula 1 abandoned this circuit considering the track to be extremely dangerous. The curve was eventually demolished and the circuit closed down soon after. To learn more about the history of the mythical Avus curve, I invite you to watch part 2 of the Extinct Circuits of Formula 1 video, and of this circuit so particular that it once hosted Formula 1 races. But thanks to its design, its speed and danger, it takes the gold from our list of legendary curves that Formula 1 no longer uses. With this, we conclude our video on the legendary Formula 1 curves that are no longer in use. But I want to ask, what did you think of this top list? Do you agree with the order we showed? Would you change it, or what curves would you put and what curves would you take out of this top that has been? On a personal note, I invite you to leave all your opinions in the comments section. I will be delighted to read each and every one of you. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, links are in the video description. And see you soon for more content on this, your Skyline Racing channel. Thanks for tuning in. See you later.